when we think about space exploration, we think about these highly advanced machines that are mounted on these gigantic rockets. They blast off with this huge cloud of smoke, and suddenly we are exploring the nooks and corners of our vast universe. We, as humans, have always been fascinated by this concept of space exploration, and we read almost daily the amount of progress we are making in this field. But what if I tell you our progress comes at a serious cost? This cost, if not checked, might overwhelm our space exploring ambitions to the extent that we cannot put a single satellite safely in orbit around the Earth, let alone send them to other celestial objects. This is how big the menace of space debris is. Space debris, as the name suggests, is the trash we humans have left in space. Every satellite we put in space adds to this, and it includes our non-defunct satellites, remains of rockets that were used to put them in space, and even small objects like a screw or a nut or simple paint flecks. It is basically any object that couldn't enter the atmosphere to burn up and remains orbiting the Earth. The figure 1 shows an artificial map that shows the currently tracked space debris. All of them pose a serious threat, and to understand that, let's just take a look at figure 2. Figure 2 shows an aluminium block 6 inches thick that seems to have been blasted by a cannonball. But no, it was hit by a tiny piece of plastic that was traveling at the speed of around 15,000 kilometers per hour. That is how fast these space objects and travel when they orbit the Earth. This mind-boggling high speeds that these Earth orbiting objects have is what makes them so destructive. Light curves, the technique that is commonly used to track space objects. Light curves basically measures the brightness of space objects over time, and it is used to estimate the shape, altitude, direction of motion, and surface features of the space objects. The data measured is of two types: astrometric data that basically deals with the physical dimensions of the body, and photometric data that deals with the intensity of light given out by the object. Figure 3 shows a typical Earth orbiting satellite and how it looks in a night sky when observed using ground-based telescopes. Figure 4 shows the typical light curve of an Earth orbiting satellite. The light curve technique is heavily dependent on the amount of light that is emitted by the space object. So, the light curve, as seen in the figure, varies largely with a lot of abrupt changes. Changes in its physical orientation, like rotation about its own axis, or simply being on the night side or the other side of the Earth, can cause this variation.
So now we will see that why the conventional CNN method is not used in discriminating between the space objects. The deep neural network like CNN can be effectively used in discriminating between the space objects if we train them on a real and simulated light curves. But such algorithms require a massive amount of labeled datasets, and also they are computationally very expensive to train. Although a large amount of data can be collected by the SSA based sensors, which are space based sensors used to survey and track the space objects, so they can capture a large amount of data, but these data are unlabeled and extensive calibration has to be done by the human operator, which is quite time consuming to label such a large amount of datasets. And also there is a chance of mislabeling some datasets by a human error, which will in turn lead to inefficient model. So in order to efficiently implement it with few datasets only, we use a meta-learning approach known as model agnostic meta-learning, or in short MAML. Now next we will see that how this deep meta-learning approach is used in the classification of the space objects. In a typical machine learning setup, we divide the datasets into training sets and test datasets, say in the ratio 4:1. But in a meta-learning approach, we first divide the datasets into a meta-sets in which each dataset is related to a particular task. Now for this space object classification, we use n-class k-sorts classification, in which each task contains a support set and the query set, and each support set contains n different classes with case labeled examples. Like in this picture we can see that each task contains 3 different classes, each with 2 samples, and also there are query sets related to that particular class. So by doing this, what we are forming a classification task which are similar to our test task. Like in this picture we can see that both the training task and the test task has similar configuration. Now the parameters of the model are trained in such a way so as to maximize their accuracy on the query set. Now, by doing this, we are making our model to learn the ability to solve an unseen classification problem. So, in order to efficiently implement this case sort and classification problem via meta learning, we use many approaches. One such approach is in which we use LSTM recurrent architecture as a meta learner to optimize our neural network classifier. This approach is basically used for safe landing site selection, but for the space-based applications, we use gradient-based MML. The main objective of using gradient-based MML is to optimize the network parameters in such a way so that it takes less gradient steps, which results in less iterations, and hence it requires less computational power.
For SSA-based data, our approach to solve the problem is case-sort in-class classification, and to solve the problem we use MML algorithm. What is a MML algorithm? MML algorithm comprises of two basic parts, meta learner and a base learner. The special fact about MML algorithm is that it provides a good initialization to the meta learner's parameters to achieve optimal and fast learning on a new task with small number of gradient steps. For this reason only, even using small number of data sets, MML can avoid overfitting. Now this is an example of overfitting just right capacity. Now let's see the MML algorithm. It comprises of a inner loop and an outer loop. Meta learner trains the base learner in the inner loop with its own iteration in the outer loop. We use deep network as our base learner in the model as our base learner. In the beginning of outer loop, the weights theta is initialized randomly. First, a batch of tasks is selected out of the set of tasks. For all ti tasks, we continue inner loop. Then k samples are selected from in-class classification. Now the cross entropy loss in ti x theta for each task ti is calculated. Here x theta is the parameterized form of the model. Now with the gradient descent, theta star is the gradient descent, theta star is calculated. Theta star is the optimal parameter for ti task. Here alpha is the learning rate for deep network model. Now in the outer loop step, the parameters of the model is trained by f theta I star with respect to theta across all tasks. The meta update of the initial weights theta is done by the stochastic gradient descent with the minimization function here. Here beta is the learning rate for the meta learner. Theta is basically gets calculated again by the average of all gradients of theta ti with respect to corresponding theta I star. Now begin from the very start, continuing the outer loop again.
The architecture has 7 layers: 1 input, 3 CNN, 2 FCN, and 1 softmax output layer. In convolution operation, a 64, 32, and 64 kernels respectively slides over our latent vector space and calculates the weighted average over every pixel. Our data is one-dimensional in nature, which is then passed through ReLU activation function. Since sigmoid and tanh are nonlinear, they saturate beyond a certain point and encounter a vanishing gradient problem. ReLU simplifies and preserves the nonlinear quality and helps in establishing complex relationships. It is also capable of displaying a true zero value. Then we regularize via dropout. To avoid overfitting, we drop some neurons randomly. Here a dropout probability of 0.2 for CNN and 0.5 for FCN is used. A max pooling layer is then used to downsample the feature space with a stride of 1 cross 4 kernel. The max pooling operation highlights the most evident feature from the patch. After going through all the layers, we finally aggregate our output by softmax Bayesian estimation. The dataset has been extracted and generated from a publicly available dataset at astrogod.ru. The data is classified into three classes: debris, rocket bodies, and satellite. The first, we have the real light curves, which are extracted from multi-channel monitoring telescopes. 500 random samples are taken for training the model. From TLE data, the class information is derived. For simulated light curves are generated by developing 4 models classifying it in fragments, rectangular cuboids, rocket bodies, and regular polygon prisms. The irregular polygon prisms is further divided into equilateral triangular prisms, square prism, and hexagonal prisms. Mathematical models are used to then generate the simulated light curves.
Results with CNN for simulated light curve. The CNN was trained on 10,000 randomly generated scenarios that included 9 different types of space objects. 5,000 data scenarios not included in the training set are used to validate the CNN during training. The 1D CNN has been trained using a single GPU with 1500 processors. During the training phase, the CNN was trained on 8,000 samples and tested on 2,000 samples with a training time of 2000 seconds. The figure shows the behavior of the cross entropy and the model accuracy as a function of the epoch. The accuracy of both the test set and training sets is similar. The CNN exhibits an accuracy of 97.83% on the test set. Results with CNN for real light curve. The same 1D CNN architecture has been employed to train the deep network on the real light curve observatories. The training set included 1,18,400 samples that was split into 3 categories: rocket bodies, debris, and others. A set of 29,993 light curve samples is employed as test set during the training. The number of epochs is said to be 2000. The figure shows the behavior of the cross entropy and the model accuracy as the function of epoch. Here we see that the accuracy of the training and test sets differs significantly. This is because the true data is more comprehensive, since it accounts for multiple types of objects with varying viewing condition and orbits. As a result, the separation boundaries between classes are likely to be very nonlinear. Results with MAML based algorithm. A dense deep network is capable of interpreting real light curve data and producing 3 possible classes: debris, rocket bodies, and satellites. The selected architecture is 5-layer deep network. A meta-training set of 10,000 samples of real light curve is considered. We looked at the K-shot N-class problem with 10 shots and 3 classes. The training set consists of 10 light curve samples chosen randomly from the meta-training set, while the test set consists of 5 random light curve samples. Training lasts for 1 epoch and includes 1000 gradient meta updates. The trained network is again trained on the new identical task, taking 3 classes and using 2 datasets containing 10 and 20 shots respectively after the initial training. There is an improvement in the deep network performance when compared to the CNN trained on the entire set of real data. Let's move to the conclusion. We introduced the concept of meta-learning and its application to space situational awareness in this study. More precisely, we looked into the topic of using light curve measurement to train deep network architectures to differentiate between different space objects, and we looked into the meta-learning technique as a suitable training strategy. It is shown that CNNs can be trained to categorize space objects using both simulated and real light curve observations, and that meta-learning can give a framework for learning with a small quantity of data. However, the provided findings are preliminary and are still being investigated.